This is day 2 of the FAI class for the Ontario Provincial Championships held the weekend of, basically Labor Day weekend 2015. This was the final day of 3. We got 2 contest days in of the 3 days, although the first day was almost good enough to fly. It was a great weekend. The task, Rockton is the SOSA location, 58. Then Tavistock, Brantford, and Ingersoll with 15-kilometer radiuses on the turn areas. And then a 2-kilometer finish radius back at Rockton. You can see the results here. I was able to win. I was the only guy able to finish. Luke almost finished, and Dave Springford and Sergey got fairly close, and Jorg landed out, and Luke landed out, and Nick Bonaire made it back with his FES. This was basically a function of luck today. I'll be perfectly honest about it. I was the first sniffer, and Nick was the second sniffer, and I was able to get up high and solidly stay around 5,000 feet until the start gate opened. It was a little bit more difficult for the guys behind. It took them another 20 minutes. And what ended up happening, if I can switch back here, is you can see the turn areas. Here's the start, the first turn area, the second turn area, and the third turn area. So Tavistock, Brantford, Ingersoll. And right about here, so where my cursor is along my sort of the rum line here for the second leg, a sea breeze front came in and closed this last turn area off. And that sea breeze front was slowly drifting with the wind about 20 miles per hour out of the west-southwest. And the first guy to get there was me, and I was able to get high enough and close enough to touch it and have enough altitude to kind of get back into the instability and get up and finish. Luke was the only other one to make it into the turn area, but he was 1,000 feet when he did it, and almost hung on, but just didn't have enough to get there. Needed just one last thermal. Another thing that's kind of interesting today, you can see here with these blue lines, here's the point that I touched in the first turn, and then the second and the third. And you can see the way the task is sort of aligned to the wind, and the wind was extremely strong for the day. And I tried to keep it really compact on the wind line. So made it to here on the north end of this cylinder, and then went kind of on the straightest course on this cylinder, and it was deviated to the north side because the last clouds were certainly on the north side, and then straight back to the finish. And that was interesting. Some other guys went in this area and then back here in this area, and that's a lot of wasted effort in this super strong wind. And ideally, I think I did a good job of maximizing my energy by not having to go across the wind very much. I'd be interested to see what other people think of that. So, with that, so you can see here off the toe, poor Nick came off a toe. Let's see, he's at 2,800 feet, so he's releasing right here. I probably came off a toe in this area, and I was able to jump right into a almost 3-knot thermal for 1,200 feet, and that allowed me to basically get wherever I needed to go. Nick came in looking for the same climb, didn't find anything, and ended up falling down basically 1,500 feet, 1,400 feet above the ground. So at this point, with one guy getting up and another guy below toe altitude, it was looking really difficult to even start the task, and the whole field was sort of waiting for us here. But for me, once I got up high, it was pretty honest. Another 2.4 knots for 1400, and this basically got me to cloud base of about 5,200 feet. Nick finally got up here with a 1.3 knot climb. That's going to get him back to tow altitude, but down low was extremely difficult, and I was just fortunate enough to find something quickly. So Nick's still well down below tow altitude, and I'm up at 5. And Ari finally finds 2 knots, and this gets him up, 4,500 feet or so. So with that call, I think they decide to resume the launch and get the rest of the gang going here. So from a start perspective, I know the launch is going to start. I know it's going to take 15-20 minutes to launch the remaining 4 gliders in the FAI field. And there's good clouds up here upwind, and I just want to get in this position as much as I can and stay at cloud base until they open the start. I know, looking at the day, that I'm going to want to go, be in a position to go immediately as soon as the start gate opens. So I'll speed it up a little bit. So here the field goes, and a lot of them have trouble, like Nick, getting up. You can see, let me zoom down here. We're seeing Fox 1, still down below 2,000. MS Sergey is still down, 2,500. That's below tow altitude. You can see Fox 1 is down 1,000 feet high over the airport, but finally gets to 3 knots and a 4,000 foot climb. So it was certainly a struggle to get up. Okay, so I sort of missed a little something here. So while that was all going on, I drift back into the cylinder. The start gate opens. I'm at roughly 5,000 feet, and sort of have this strategy of trying to keep it on the wind line and being as efficient as I can. So starting off the southern edge for me makes sense from a clouds perspective, and getting a little extra distance in the start. If I start right out the front edge, you lose distance. If you start here, you get a few extra kilometers. So that's what I had in mind. And you can see here, this is Jorg Stieber. He's in a good position to start as well, and we're sort of in visual contact. And this here is Nick Bonaire and his LAC 17B FES. So I know I start at 22. I'll slow it down just a little bit. And there we go, and basically Nick Bonaire goes at the same time. Looking back, you can see Luke here. He's still down at 3,300 feet, which is roughly 2,500 feet above the ground. And this is a big advantage for me. I was able to stay in a position to start right away. Jorg managed to do that, even though he launched a little bit, 20 minutes later. And Nick got up and was able to go as well. So when I'm analyzing the flights, I just like to look at thermal selection, how many misses. There's a way to understand this in the analysis that right here that SeeYou provides, and just kind of the general tactics. I have a very good picture of what the clouds were like. I'll try and post some pictures to this video as well, just to give you a feel. There was dense clouds. They were strong, hard-bottomed. They were all over the place, but they were difficult. It was very difficult to find the lift. There was no consistency. For example, the lift was not always on the windward side of the cloud. Sometimes it was on the lee side of the cloud, or the north or the south, and you really had to be observant and trying to be efficient to find the climbs quickly. And again, there's a lot of wind, showing 15 miles per hour right now, and it gets higher throughout the day. Let me put this back so we can see some of the other folks. We'll keep it on Jorg for now. So it looks like Jorg goes back and restarts. So let's take a look at that. So he actually restarts here. It's 31, so that's 9 minutes later, and he's restarting at an altitude of 4,800 feet. And I think that was higher than his start altitude the first time. So I've continued plunging forward. I'm down to 4,300 feet, maybe 15 kilometers up course. And let's zoom out a little bit. And Nick has gotten up to 5,000 feet in a climb, and looks like he went back and restarted as well. So I'm off on my own. So there's a 2.5 knot climb for 400 feet. I'm up near cloud base, but unfortunately that cloud didn't go higher. So Nick's done a really good job. He started quite high, and it looks like he's had he has not taken a climb since the start. So he's almost the same altitude, only 400 feet below, and in the same relative position in terms of progress. So there's another huge miss. My goal today was not to get below 4,000. And you can see there I was actually gaining altitude in a straight line. So a 303 LD here. Nick's doing a little bit of the same. So there were streets, there were areas of lift that you could run. You didn't have to just focus on climbs. So there's 3 knots for 800 feet, and that's going to get me right up to cloud base, 5,200 feet roughly. So let's see, Nick is 3,700 feet, slightly more progress towards the turn. And where is Jorg? Jorg has really deviated around to the south here. So he started out over here and has really moved around to the north. And that is interesting to look at. So Nick's down pretty low now, down almost to pattern altitude, 2,300 feet above the ground. We're about even, but I'm still maintaining 5,000 or cloud base. And Jorg is sort of on the bottom edge of what I think the range was today. So Dave Springford has started and had a good first run. Dave is at 4,000, bottom of the band, but making good progress, and probably was caught up a little bit at this point. Yeah, I guess equal with the altitude difference. So here's the first turn. Another miss for me. Nick is down to 2,000 feet above the ground. He's really pushing. And if you think about, this isn't so bad. We're into a 21 mile per hour wind, and the technique is to go into the upwind turn point low and go into downwind turn points high, meaning spending the time, most of your time thermaling on the downwind legs and minimizing the time thermaling on the upwind legs. Jorg here is up to 4,500 feet, kind of middle. Dave's still down at 4,000. The pink here is Sergey, and Luke is the green. Another miss for me. Nick is going to turn around here pretty quickly, and he's low. He's below 2,000 feet right now. So I find 2.5 for 800. That's going to put me back up to cloud base, and there you can see Nick making his turn, and he's down 900 feet elevation there, so he's down to 1,300 feet. He's low, extremely low. Jorg is 4,400 feet, kind of middle of the range. Let's call it 5,300 top and 4,000 kind of the bottom. Anything below 4,000 is a little bit risky. With that, Fox 1 is climbing a 1,000-foot climb for almost 3 knots. Sergey is up near cloud base, and Luke is up near cloud base and has actually gotten by Sergey. And I'm still quite a ways from the turn. Let me recenter on the group here. So Jorg Stieber he's 3,600, but he finds a great climb for 1,100 feet at 3 knots, 3 minutes 44 seconds of climbing. I'm down at the bottom of my comfort range, 4,000 feet, and Fox 1, Dave Springford, is doing pretty well. And here's Sergey and Luke, 4,300 and 4,800 respectively. Now Nick is ST is up to 4,000, 2,000 feet for 2.5 knots downwind. So tactically, that's excellent. I'm thinking though, I want to get halfway into the cylinder, but I do not want to be below 4,000. I know it's good to go down and run that out, run that energy out into the wind, and then turn around and take the climb. But I don't think there are reliable climbs below 4,000. And also notice this direct line here is directly into the wind. So there's 3 knots for 800 feet. There's no wasted energy here. I'm trying to keep it on the wind line as much as I can, looking for energy lines, that sort of thing. So Jorg is pushing in high, 4,400 or 4,800 feet. LDs here are always good to watch. I've got a 606 LD here at this point, which is good. I've obviously got some sort of an energy line. And if you look here at the glide, it's fairly flat. Fox 1's doing a great job, 4,600 feet in a 2.5 knot climb for 728 feet. Nick is long gone. He's turned downwind, and if this day turns out to be weaker, he's going to have an advantage. We're probably going way too far into the wind and spending too much time. Speak of the devil, this is Luke calling. Pause it for a second. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So I'm on the way downwind now. David, Luke, Sergey, and Jorg are still pushing in. If I zoom out, you can see that Nick has run downwind. He's found a couple climbs. You can see the altitude here. The dark blue means basically you're at cloud base. He's had a really good run. 59 to 1 LD. I'm still on a 606, so I had a really good run through here. There must be a little street of clouds, which is why I'm bending absolutely to the edge of that turn area. Sergey's up at cloud base. Nick is running downwind at cloud base. Luke is right at cloud base. Jorg is right at cloud base, and Fox 1 is on the way. Actually, interesting here, he took a large climb, but he wasn't able to get quite up to cloud base. He's close, but that 400 feet is a big deal. And I'm at the same altitude, running downwind a little bit. So I guess being 500 feet below cloud base to me was like going into the turn low. Okay, so what I was thinking here is, you can see the next turn area here. There was a little bit of a convergence or something here that were stronger clouds that were kind of lined up, and I'm trying to get into a position here to run down one of these streets. I'm very sensitive to going across the wind, but downwind it really doesn't matter so much. And I'm also slowed way down to, the equivalent of maybe 60 knots. I think it's 100 kph. I have a metric airspeed, and it's going pretty well. I think I have a pretty good run downwind, but Nick is way ahead on average speed so far. He's almost into the second turn. He's at 3,700 feet. He just needs a climb, and his distance is almost maxed. So Nick is really at this point way ahead. All these guys are basically even. I can't remember exactly where they started, and they probably gained a little bit on me, to be honest. So I still got that 606 mean LD. So there's 2.9, but only for 400 feet. So I guess that gets me back up close to cloud base. These guys went way into the turn, and they're still at cloud base, 49 and 49 respectively. They're probably flying right with each other. So that's Sergey and Luke. Dave is a little low, driving upwind here, and he doesn't go quite as far as me. He turns right about there. And Jorg is on his way downwind and moderately high, 4,500 feet. Let me kick down this way, and here you can see, unbelievable. Nick he's done. He's already banged it to the back of the second turn, but he's a little low. He's I'll call it 2,400 feet, about 800 feet surface elevation. And I know I've talked to Nick, and I know he had a hellacious time back here. So if he would have found a climb, and it might be that he was too low to connect because there were clouds, maybe it was just a matter of just being a little too aggressive or passing up a little too much down here, or not deviating enough to be under the clouds. For whatever reason, overall, he dominated the rest of us really to this point. He just nipped in, and here he is all the way back here. And later in the day, it's going to be a little weak. I guess we did get a bit more distance than him. This is a 30-kilometer diameter here, so maybe we got another 8, 9, 10, so 20 total kilometers of more distance. But all of a sudden, bang, he's 50, 60, 70, 80 kilometers ahead here. So I think overall he's well ahead in terms of total distance and average speed in the flight. Okay. Wow, these guys are still going, Luke and Sergey. They're so high, 5,500 feet. 5,500 feet. I mean, that's extraordinary. And Fox 1 as well. I think I saw 5,700 feet there. It's enormous. Anyway, so Jorg is having to work crosswind. He went way to the north side of this first turn, and that's pretty much a crosswind here, where I touched and going downwind, I'm more of straight downwind. But regardless, he's done a real good job, and he's high. Again, he started well behind me. He went back and started, and basically even with me, so Jorg's well ahead. 1.7 knots for 1,800 feet. Nick is well to the back of this turn and is climbing. So if he can get up solidly and start moving forward, he's still in a good situation. But the wind is so strong, it sort of skews the vision of what's going on. It was really getting as deep in here, having a great glide on the way back, staying high, and getting in a position where you start moving back to the third turn point without any difficulty. Nick's obviously in difficulty. I'm down at 4,000. I'm kind of about to get into difficulty, and these guys are enormously high and drifting downwind. Sergey and Luke here do have more of a crosswind issue. They were a little bit further north than me, and seems like Dave has the same strategy here of kind of keeping it on the wind line to avoid going across the wind. Okay. So a miss for me there. And so this is an interesting moment. Right here, right in this area, there is another glider climbing that I see. It's a club class glider, and Jorg goes right by me, 4,800 feet. He's 1,000 feet above me, and keeps going this way. And I'm curious about that. It might just be a random thing, but there is a 7-knot climb, what I thought was a 7-knot climb. It was a 5.1 average just in front of me here. And Jorg, with that altitude, if he would have jumped into that, he would have been in a really great position. But anyway, this sort of saves me here. I'm down to 3,800 feet, and you can see right there, 5.1 knots for almost 1,200 feet, and that really got me in the position to even make it back to the third turn. Jorg is now, it's sort of like the situation is reversed. He was at 5,000, now he's at 5,500, and if he doesn't find a good climb here, he's going to be, way downwind and struggling to get back up, and ultimately he does end up landing out. I just thought that cross there was interesting, and I wonder what he saw. For me, there was absolutely nowhere else to go than over here, and I thought I might even be going outside the turn area to do it and then jumping back in, and that's actually exactly what I end up doing. And Jorg saw something entirely differently, and Jorg and I never talked about what that was, but it's interesting. Maybe he'll email me here. Maybe he still remembers. It's been a week now. So there I hit that climb and kind of drift down and touch. So I get pretty deep here into the turn. And let's see, I'm at 5,000 feet. And then I go right back looking for that climb again. Jorg, as you can see, he's doing okay. He's down to 4,400 feet. And Nick is really struggling. He took a weak climb out the back, and now he's rolling forward, and he's at about 2,500 feet here above the ground, 700 feet below what I sort of consider the 4,000 foot mark to be the bottom of the envelope. Okay. So Dave Springford, 5,000 feet crossing in. Luke, also 5,000 feet. And Dave had a really good run, obviously, here into the turn. I didn't connect with that climb, but at least had a good zero sync run. But you can see here, back into the wind, I was just at 5,000 feet. I'm down to 4,400 here at a 50-1 LD, and this was a very difficult leg. Nick is 2,600 feet. He's down to 1,800 feet AGL. And Jorg goes boom way to the back, and he's had a relatively good run. He's still at 4,500 feet, but this might be too deep. It's just another 10 kilometers or 12 kilometers or so back directly upwind of the turn, and you can see here that he's now sort of on the other side of the wind line, so he's going to be taking the wind, maybe a 10 or 15 degree component to get back into the off the left side to get back into the next turn. and that's just something I read in a book somewhere about trying to, on windy days, minimize your wasted energy across the wind line. Okay. So Jorg turned here at 4,300 feet, the yellow glider. Dave is still going back. He'll probably turn upwind after this climb, actually. So there he is, real high, 5,100 feet. No, he still goes for more. Right to the back, and turns at 4,400 feet out of the very back of the cylinder. That's interesting. And let's do a status check on everybody. Nick is super low. He's at 1,000 feet here, AGL, 1,900 feet. I'm pretty nervous too, 3,000 feet, pretty much by 600, 700, 800 feet, as low as it's been on the entire task so far. And what I'm seeing is there are a line of clouds, or what looks like a convergence, and it looks like a sea breeze front has come, and everything back here is completely clear, not even a wisp. It's absolutely flat, still air, and it's blocking us to make it to this final third turn, which I believe is Ingersoll. And this is incredibly difficult. Obviously, that convergence is moving away from the Ingersoll turn at roughly 20 miles per hour. So time is of the essence here. And even though, basically everybody had caught me at some point, or at least Nick and Jorg had caught me, the other three that started a little bit later and also have pretty much banged it into the back of the turn may not notice or see how dire that is. And I've certainly recognized that. I'm really thinking, how do I get as close as possible, as high as possible, to drift upwind, touch it, and make it back to the convection and out of the stable air upwind, or closer to the, let me zoom out here, closer to the lake shore. And you can sort of see what's going on here. The sea breeze front, or dry line, or whatever it was, is here, and it's blowing off the lake. There's probably a sea breeze here, and that's slowly cycling and driving that convection further away. So it was a really interesting day. All these tasks in Canada are always heavily influenced by these lake shores, and I was pretty amazed to see this happen, because just the leg before there were relatively good clouds down here, and now we've gone down and back, which is only a half hour, maybe 35, 40 minutes, and suddenly there's a distinct line with total clearness behind it. So anyway, I hope I've explained that well, so that you guys can understand what we were faced with. So Nick is in deep trouble. I'm really low, and the other guys are maybe just too far back. They're basically in the back of the cylinder, and they've got to go all the way back to this point. You can see here where I touched, right downwind of the city, hoping for any bubbles that I could possibly get. All right, so 1,400 feet for 2 knots. And that's going to get me up to maybe 4,000 or a little higher. And you can see how strong the thermal drift is. So 45, 46. And now I'm faced with kind of my last few clouds. And they were actually really strong clouds. I was almost certain that I was going to find a climb here, which was perfect. But the other strong cloud was over here. So I went to the one that was more on course and that kept me more on the wind line. And then when that didn't work, decided, well, I'll drift downwind or sideways to the wind and go down and check the other cloud. I really didn't, at this altitude, want to go out there. I knew that I wouldn't get back to the clouds very high. It would almost be a almost a for sure land out situation. So here I am at 4,300, and that doesn't work at all. And I deviate way back here looking for the other cloud, and that doesn't work at all either. So now I've lost 300 feet and am safe and faced with the exact same problem. I've got to touch this and go downwind. And I would have given anything to have that 300 feet back, but I still think it was the right choice to go check these extremely strong looking clouds. Looking back at the group, Luke has kind of passed everybody now. He's at 4,500 feet and has managed to negotiate this first half of the last or the second to last leg better than the rest of the group. You've got Fox 1 is stuck at 3,600 feet. Sierra Tango, Nick is still down at 1,300 feet above the ground or so. And Mike Sierra is doing fine. He's up at 5,000 feet, but he's quite a ways back. So Luke has really sort of rose to the top back there. Now as I come into this turn, I basically make it to the turn at 2,000 feet AGL, which I think is going to be pretty good. And it turns out to be barely enough. The cloud line, you can see Luke, he's probably running on the last edge of the clouds that have drifted downwind since I was here. And he's actually probably probing the same cloud that I was trying to find here at that point. And then there's another one here. We'll see what he does. So anyway, I'm coming into the last turn at 2,000 feet, and big gulp. I've got a long way to go, and I'm really low. And I'm about 1,500 feet below making the finish. So there I stop for 1 minute and 30 seconds in nothing. But again, on the downwind, that's easier to do. You don't really lose that much. You're drifting downwind at 20 miles per hour. And it's absolute survival mode right now. So now I'm at 2,400 feet, which is basically 1,500 feet above the ground. And Luke is going by me here at 4,000. And you can see he kind of did the exact same thing that I did. He came up here and searched this cloud, didn't work, and now he's down here probably searching these last few clouds, and the line runs something like this. So looking back, Sergey, who was quite high before, is actually in a really good position. He's 4,500 feet, just a few kilometers behind Luke, and he's working that same last little edge of clouds trying to get up and in. Dave Springford is a little behind Sergey at 4,000 feet. And Jorg is really struggling. In fact, I think he's already landed out. So there's Jorg here in the yellow glider. And Nick had enough too. He probably was smart and turned on his FES and is flying back home, back to Sosa. All right, so 900 feet is kind of ground altitude here. You can see Jorg on the ground at 960. So I'm down below 1,000 feet, 700 feet or so, and find a very weak climb. It started out at 2/10 to half a knot and slowly built up to 2.5 knots, 1,600 feet. And this gets me to level on the 1,000 foot finish altitude with 25K to go. But I started out at 600-700 feet above the ground over a chosen field and just spun my brains out to get back up to right on final glide. But I still needed a little bit more to be safe. Let's go back to Luke here for a second. Luke is, you can see there, he's got a little bit further to punch it in. And probably more interesting to watch Luke right now. I'll zoom out a little bit for him. Luke is low. 1,900 feet, so he's basically 1,000 feet above the ground, and he still has a little bit further to go to get into the turn. Just turn back to Luke here for a second. So there, he's touched, and he's 1,848 feet, so roughly 900 feet above the ground. He's a gutsy pilot. He knows the area well, and I think there are several airports around here that he could go to, but there's certainly a ton of fields. But good for him for doing whatever it took to finish this task. Let me jump back over to myself, and we'll keep an eye on Luke here as well. So I think there I take another little 200-foot climb, and that gets me in. And let's go back to Luke here, which is a much more interesting story. So here, Luke is taking 0.2 knot average for 528 feet, and it took 22 minutes to do. Talk about hanging on by your fingernails. He's now at roughly 1,100 feet above the ground, and it's the way you do it. You survive. And he's also drifting right back to this airport, which is good. Let's look back here a little bit. Jorg is there. Where are the other guys? Oh, it looks like Dave Springford already turned around and went home, and Sergey's going home, and there's Jorg. Let's see, Sergey's probably got it from there. Yeah, he's got it. I've got to finish at 1,800 feet. I've only got 3 more kilometers to go, so I'm okay. And then there's Luke. So that's amazing. 0.2 knot average for 22 minutes and 600 feet. I mean, it just goes to show that it's better to be climbing or even holding altitude than in doubt, and you hang on to that until you see something better. The problem is, though, he's probably drifting downwind at basically the same speed as the clouds, so he's probably not getting any closer to anything that looks good ahead. So he touched there, took the thermal there, and basically is thermaling up to 1,500 feet and back to that airport, which looks like 12, 15 kilometers. Let me zoom in a little bit. And there he's leaving. He's at 1,500 feet or so. And there he jumps onto something else, and let's actually probably call it zero sync. Finds another tiny climb. But again, what's happening here is this is just a function of time. I barely had enough time to get close enough in that cloud line to get in and make it out, and I did make it back underneath the clouds, and also some other club class gliders and FAI gliders as well. Luke, it just took him another 15 minutes or 10 minutes to do that, and the clouds were, another 3-4 miles away, and it was just too much. And so here he is, still another 6 minutes for 226 feet, half a knot. So he's just grinding, and that's a really good characteristic to have in these weak conditions. So he's running downwind, and only a 40-to-1 LD in the downwind, so he's probably suffering in some sink, for sure. And he's down to 1,000 feet now. And you can see his eventual spot here. He's deviating as much as he can. He's probably 700 feet above the ground here. Obviously he's got an airport as well. Let me zoom in a little bit. And slow it down a little bit. Yeah, so there he's probably 500 feet above the ground. And he takes the airport. So he was in control, safe, and found and landed at an airport. And this must be the closest point that he was scored for. And just did not have any more time in the day to do it, but did a great job out of the second to last turn point into the Ingersoll turn point. Just to make it there was a miracle, and he almost pulled it off. All he needed was a 1.5 knot climb or something like that just to get back in place. But anyway, back to the scores. You can see here I was able to win with that day, a hugely devalued day, 77 mile an hour average speed, devalued or handicapped to 66, 193 kilometers, and just under 2.5 hours minimum time. And then Luke had a great day, 484 points, and for the Ontario Championship, he's the champion since I'm a U.S. pilot. And then Dave Springford just hung on to third over Sergey, who got a few more points today, 11 more kilometers. And then Jorg had a tough day. Again, he's flying an LS8 and our standard class glider. And then Nick, who had an amazing task and I apparently just picked, or first half of the task, and apparently just picked a little bit of a bad line out of that second turn point. Okay, so to finish up, I wanted to walk through the task statistics. It's right here on SeeYou, and just take a look at the various tasks. Now, I was the only one to make it all the way around, so I'm not quite, I haven't analyzed a flight like this quite yet, and I'll just do it the way I normally do it. There's a lot of information here. You can see my distance, just shy of 200 kilometers. The start was at 5,300 feet. And this is interesting. I didn't mention this before, but there was no start height, which I thought was genius. There was no start gate roulette. There was no looking at a watch. It was obviously capped by the cloud base. Why not simply let the glider start? And this 500-foot ridiculousness is just silly. Anyway, there's no way to predict where the cloud base is going to be when the gliders do decide to start. Anyway, but I know that will be an interesting debate. So 53.45 for the start. Finish 1870. It was an 1,800-foot finish altitude. Slightly under minimum time, 2 hours 30 minutes, so 25 seconds early for a average speed of 79.43. I'm not quite sure what the cross-country speed is since this is for the task. I don't know why there's two different ones. I'll have to look into that. So the interesting things are the circling time. So 23% of the task, which is quite high in a 15-meter glider, 34 minutes of climbing, 2.2 average. You can look at the altitude gain there and the altitude loss within the thermaling. So roughly just under 8,000 feet. 12 thermals, 6 to the left. Well, actually, 72% to the left, 25 to the right. That's just the way I am. And let's see. The other interesting pieces here, obviously 13 glides. If you have 12 thermals, you're going to have 13 glides. Your average gliding range or gliding distance, 17.4 kilometers. And these are, they're related. It's obviously if you have less glides, you're going to have a longer average glide. And a mean LD of 66. There's all kinds of information, the various phases of flight, and I think you can export this information and go crunch it in other ways. But anyway, we'll just stick with the basics. And this is for 7 Tango myself. Second place for the day was 2 Whiskey, Luke. 11 thermals. Now, he didn't quite make it back. He was still 15 kilometers short of the finish. So that makes sense as to why he has one less thermal than I did, but 110 mean LD. Now his climb rate is extremely low, and that's probably because he spent a ton of time climbing in that really weak thermal, and his altitude gain is really low, 5,000 feet versus mine, which was 9,000 feet with 1,000 feet of loss. His was 5,000 feet with 2,500 feet of loss circling. So that's really interesting. The cross-country speed's slower. The time is this is the time up to the land out. The start height, he was a little higher. So there's some interesting data there. But the big one that comes out to me is when he was flying, Luke had almost double the LD that I had in a longer glide, even though he went a shorter distance. So for whatever reason, he was flying quite efficiently. And that's something to note and go back and look at when you relook at the flight. Start to try and understand how and why. And that's difficult to do if you don't have the vision of what the weather was exactly for them and what they did. The only way you can really talk to the other pilot. Third, I think, was Mike Sierra, so let's take a look at him. He didn't quite make it all the way around. 61 mile an hour average speed, under time, 5,500 feet start, and 10 thermals, 2.2 average. And again, he would have had a 0.5 average if he would have grounded up with Luke in that really difficult last section of the flight. But at 84 mean LD, which is very good. Dave Springford, Fox 1, a 2.3 average. He didn't quite make it around, so those numbers aren't relevant. But a very, very strong mean LD. And I don't know whether those LDs are higher because they didn't go upwind all the way like Luke and I did. But then again, mine was 66 and Luke's was 110. So I'm not sure that really ties together. I haven't really thought about that. Jorg, 10 thermals, 74 LD. Started a little lower. Distance is a little lower, time a little lower, but for all intents and purposes, very similar flight to a lot of the guys. And Nick is fantastic. And what I want to do here, Nick had a very difficult last leg, but you can look at the phases of the flight and you can compare those. So, for example, he went in real low to the first turn. So Rockton to the Tavistock turn, he had an average speed of 86, 3 thermals, 1,000 foot gain, 2.5 vario, and a mean LD into the wind of 40. It's interesting. If we go back to me and go down to that first phase, 6 thermals, way slower, 20 kilometers slower average speed, a little higher LD, so a little slower and a little bit better LD. And the same climb rate. So you can start to try and piece it together. Now, obviously, if you're doing an assigned area task as typical and somebody starts a half hour behind the other guy, that data is totally irrelevant because the major variable is simply the luck or skill, if you want to call it skill, of making a different choice. But no one can see a half hour into the future. And that really is a pretty significant variable in what is supposed to be technically racing. So anyway, just some thoughts of how we slice and dice these things and trying to look for patterns, look for trends, typical coaching analysis. So I will stop there. Thanks again.